Hi YouTube, I want to talk about some delay mechanics in fighting games, and it's usually a concept that's under talked about in my opinion, and it's a concept that I've used at a high level in numerous fighting games, and it stems a lot from rhythm manipulation. But rhythm manipulation is a video that could warrant its own topic because it's a general topic in fighting games and what it does to your opponent's mental stack and all of that. So we're going to briefly touch upon that today and what it means for 2xKO. This is particularly helpful on characters that don't necessarily have a lot of individual left-right mix-ups like Yasuo does. You know, obviously you can start just doing some left-right mix-ups with some of the special moves, but a character like Jinx, other than her zoning and things like that, and she does have one overhead, what else are you really going to do to open up your opponent unless you're using your assists? Which, of course, using your assists is always a great way to open up your opponent. For instance, on Yasuo and Jinx team here, we can simply call our assist as Yasuo goes to the other side and we get like an instant cross-up with the missile like that. This video won't be necessarily about those kinds of setups because obviously you should be doing them, and it's its own topic. This is going to be particularly useful if your assist is on cooldown and you're trying to open up your opponent with an individual character, and this kind of works with everyone. And what I mean by this is delaying your normal attacks. When you're going light, medium, heavy in this game, it's a true block string, right? So we put it on after block that she wants to do a jab. There's no way she can fit a jab between this string, but in this game there is a way to slightly delay manually your buttons, and you can still get a cancel, and you leave a bigger gap in between, and this will create what we call a frame trap, where I leave a little bit of gap in there where she can start up her jab or her mash as soon as possible, but we stop it, right? But our concepts are going to go a little bit deeper than just creating frame traps in 2xKO if you hold on. We're going to take it a little step further, and we're also going to start displaying this frame meter because this is a great way of noticing if there's any gaps that you're creating with your intentional manual delay presses. So if you look at Jinx here, or at least the player 2 Jinx, you'll see a bar that's all blue, and of course when there's going to be those black squares in between the blue bar like I did just there, I left a gap of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames, and this is how you can check if you're delaying enough to create those gaps to begin with. To make a nice tight frame trap, you want the gap to be pretty small so they can't fit in something. But this is where the magic happens. When I'm playing fighting games, I actually make sure to even increase or change I vary the amount of gap that I leave there. And if I ever do leave a very, very wide one, it is intentional. I want to give opportunities for my opponent to actually want to press buttons while I'm pressuring them. It kind of depends, right? And this is where we're going to go into observing your opponent's so-called defensive patterns. But if they're willing to, you know, down back a lot and they're only blocking, then your frame traps aren't necessarily going to work, right? Because they're content just blocking. And I think the biggest thing that this game offers to kind of force them to want to challenge on your offense is the charge H. The charge H has a very interesting property where you can dash cancel after it and you retain your turn. You're plus 31. That means you move 31 frames before your opponent can, or you can input a button before. So theoretically, this is kind of infinite pressure where it's kind of almost always your turn unless they deal with it. And of course, there's a significant gap there enough that they could stop you from doing it. You're basically incentivizing or conditioning them to want to press a button. And the beauty of it all is that if you start conditioning them to want to challenge, is that you can half charge this thing, leaving an even smaller gap and then capturing their button, right? There's a lot of defensive options in this game, whether it's retreating guard, whether it's the assist push block or the parry, and the defensive options are pretty good. So if you delay when you're actually going to try to do a mix-up or anything against your opponent much later, like after 3 hits like this, there's no threat, which gives him time to potentially like do a push block. So you want to make it so that every single hit that you do has a potential threat. Now, as you're leaving gaps and creating frame traps, this means that even though you're minus and it's not your turn after any of these normals, you can still go for the throw off of the conditioning that they're kind of afraid of you doing a frame trap. Alright, let's recap and more importantly, put everything together and summarize. First of all, you want your threats and your mix-ups to happen very early into the pressure because you don't want them to think about what they can do in defense and potentially push you back with an assist pushback or the retreating guard mechanic and all those things. Kind of like when you're using an assist potentially and just going for a left-right mix-up right out of the gate before you even make them block anything else. More powerful because they don't have time to react to some of the push stuff that they can be doing. Second of all, instead of doing, of course, very tight block strings, you want them to have threats and small gaps in there that they could be retaliating on defense and get caught. So the first time that you hit them on block, maybe your second hit, you create a small gap. Of course, if they get hit by these frame traps all the time, just keep going. They're retaliating on defense against them and they're getting hit and you're getting combos, which is nice. By the way, you can't really put a small gap after a small gap after a small gap, unfortunately, because if one of them actually works out, you're going to want to be sure to pick it up and confirm it into a combo. So sometimes it goes a little bit like you do a hit, you leave a small gap, then you do 2 close hits, which leaves your brain time to think, oh, did they get hit by them? Should I continue into a full combo? Or are they still blocking? And if so, did they push me back? And if they didn't, maybe then you can go for another one of those small gap / frame traps at the very end of your string. Maybe a little bit like something like this. You know, I kind of left some gaps in there, but I also left some that are 2 hits that are close by to make sure that in case one of them would work, my brain has time to confirm it into a combo, which makes it all very practical. After that, what we discussed, if they're blocking your small gaps and frame traps a lot, they're either a player that's willing to just block a lot on defense, or maybe they're a player that got caught by a few of them, maybe they're afraid to retaliate now. You've conditioned them, potentially, to not want to press anything and just keep blocking because they need to be sure they don't get caught in any of the gaps that you're doing. So that's the time when you can move in and schmove in there, get the throw, or maybe even start charging the charge H and get those sweet plus frames which increase your pressure because it's still your turn after. And then once you're starting to go for the throw like this, or when you start going to reset your pressure with a charge H, what ends up happening is now you're incentivizing to start and hit buttons against you. And if they start doing that, then now you can move back to doing frame traps against them. So you're kind of trying to dictate the flow. Essentially, when you keep changing up your rhythm like this, it gets really hard for them on defense to decide what to do against your offense. Should they retaliate in case that you try to reset your pressure with charge heavy? Should they keep blocking in case you do a frame trap? Should they try to attack the throw if it's coming for them? They can also potentially retaliate with a light or a medium against the throw because you're minus after normals in this game for the most part, unless you've called the assist, which by the way, all of this still applies with assist calling, assist tagging. Those tend to give you plus frames on block. However, when you're still continuing your segments, you can still be doing these rhythm manipulations intermixed with your assist play and the assist pressure that it's giving you. Essentially, it goes even further because after doing a block normal, if they're afraid of a frame trap or something and you're suspecting that, it allows for some creativity. Like there, I could just do a jab into the sort of bounce Mario. I won't go into all of the creative options that you can do, but you can start cooking in those moments as well. The last thing I should mention is that there are things on defense that they can do to increase their odds of reading the right thing by defending against 2 possible choices at once. We call these things option selects. You might have heard about them. There's things like fuzzy jumping, fuzzy mashing, which is kind of the same as delay jabbing. Then there's also delay tech. Having said that, understanding these terms and what they are can also be beaten by rhythm manipulation. Unfortunately, you have to leave a certain specific kind of gap to try to blow up these option selects. It's still possible to do. There's possibly other ways to beat these option selects that are more not as delicate at finding the exact perfect rhythm. But I think this whole topic about those advanced defensive things and what you can do specifically with rhythm manipulation to beat them other than other options that also exist is kind of the topic of another video. But hey, if you want to go down the rabbit hole, you can search up these things, or of course, let me know in the comments if you would like me to cover those more advanced topics eventually and what it means for 2x KO. Alright, with that being said, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today, so thanks for watching. So I think it's better to just make it exist and perfect it later, right? Gotta get over the fact that it's unscripted and that you only have this background idea for what you want to talk about, and just believe that you will say the things that you need to say and improve with time the more you do it. Trial by fire. That's how I did my first commentary in a tournament with Mr. Omega that's actually here. I just kind of threw myself in there. There's a first to everything.